Hey guys, my name is Patrick. Hi, Dwan. My name is Patrick O'Halloran. Looks like a couple of people are joining. It's the top of the hour. I'm going to give us just a minute or two to let more people come into the room, but thank you for joining us. We've got a pretty good webinar in store for you today. Excuse me. As I said, I'm going to give us a few minutes to let anyone else come in and join who may. Let me bring up my screen. And there we go. So we still have a couple of people coming in. I'll give us about 90 seconds, and then I'll go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for joining. I happen to live in Dallas, Texas, in the southern part of the United States, and I'm happy to say that our summer is officially over. Labor Day is coming up next Monday in the United States, but our high temperatures are already way below normal, which is nice. I was actually out this morning outside about 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was nice and bright and cool. So we have about 7 people joining us now. As I said, I'm going to give us a few more seconds. Excuse me, before I jump in and go ahead and get started. We do have a Q&A panel at the bottom. We have a chat panel as well. I have those open up on my other screen, so occasionally I may be glancing that way. But if I do miss your questions, I apologize in advance. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in what I'm doing on the small screen, I don't have a chance to see what's on the big screen. All right, so we are a couple minutes past the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Patrick O'Halloran. I appreciate you guys joining. I am a solutions architect at WhereScape, and today we're going to be talking about validating your architecture before you deploy. A lot of people are either building or enhancing their data warehouses, and I always preface these things by saying that data warehouse is a very specific meaning and a very general meaning, and I mean data warehouse in the general sense. The very specific meaning has, some people might call it outdated or passé or something, but in the general sense, a data warehouse is a large information system gathering data from multiple sources, curating it, collating it, throwing security on top of that, documenting it, and making that available to end users. And those end users could be data analysts generating dashboards and reports. It could be data scientists doing data mining. It could even now, I would say, AI with machine learning and other attributes. Data warehouses, information systems are fantastic sources of information for training and feeding data into AI. See if I can get my mouse to work. There we go. So we've got a little slide here that talks about data being valuable, and it really is. I'd almost call it a commodity in terms of a business now. And the more information a company has, an organization has, whether it's a private company or an NGO or a nonprofit higher education facility, whatever it is, the better decisions they can make about student retention, customer retention, ordering supplies, all those kinds of things. And the one line here is about how data-driven companies are 23 times more likely to attract new customers. Now, there's a lot of data out there from a lot of different sources. I'd say in the last 10 years, there's just been an explosion of sources of data. It used to be simple. You used to have ERPs, maybe some online databases, maybe some Excel spreadsheets, but now data can come from about anywhere. So WhereScape is focused around data automation. What is data automation? It's building your information system using metadata, using rules, using templates in a structured way to get rid of a lot of the hand coding and hand development. WhereScape started 25 years ago as a consulting company building data warehouses. We were doing a lot of repetitive tasks. So we started building tools to automate those tasks. And those tools became quite powerful and quite flexible. And people started asking if they could buy those tools. And at that point, WhereScape stopped as a consulting company, began as a software company. And that's what we do now. We build tools to help you build your information systems. If you think in terms of the gold rush in California, you've got gold and everybody wants gold. You've got miners who are digging the gold. We are supplying the picks and shovels to the miners. We're a software company that provides tools that companies use to design, develop, automate, deploy their information systems. A lot of risks and challenges in building your data warehouse. I'm not going to go through all these, every single one, but things change at an increasing rate. There's some companies that exist today that didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago. Fabric has only been around, even in preview mode, 2 years. It's brand new. Things are changing. As I said, there's an explosion of data sources. You can pull in weather data. You can pull in data internationally, all sorts of information that may be important to your organization. How do you integrate that data into your data warehouse, a modern data warehouse, so that like I said, the analysts, scientists, everyone else can use that data. And the last one on there, I would say, building a data warehouse is among the riskiest IT projects a company can take on. There was a survey, a report done by Gartner back in 2022. So it was about 3 years ago. But they said that data warehouses were the riskiest projects IT could take on with the highest rate of failure. And I've seen it again and again. People are coming to WhereScape because they've had failures in the past. And sometimes those failures aren't obvious for 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. We've had companies that have had 20 people working on a data warehouse. After a year, they just stopped. They had nothing to deliver. They just stopped the project and wanted to start completely over. That's definitely one of the biggest risks, is building a good data warehouse. So why WhereScape? The big thing is efficiency, productivity, not just in terms of writing code, but developing and delivering a fully production tested, documented system. There's a good book I always have next to my desk. I'll point it out, called The Mythical Man Month. That came out a long time ago. It came back, I think, in the 70s. I got my copy in the 80s, just to date myself a little bit. And he was talking about developing operating systems, but a lot of the same tenets in the book apply to building any kind of large IT structure. And really, the measure is not how many lines of code you can develop. The measure is how much production code, production tested, delivered code. And that's where WhereScape really shines, because we don't just generate code. We don't just generate DDL and DML and templates and stored procedures and all these things. We develop stuff, and you'll see it as we go through today's demo, that this stuff works and works the first time. We've had companies that have eliminated levels of testing. We had one company that completely eliminated unit testing. They said, if stuff's developed by WhereScape, we're going to implicitly believe that it's going to do what we told it to do, which is what unit testing is. Is it doing what we told it to do? Now, they still have to go through integration testing, system testing, user acceptance testing, because that asks a different question. The question it asks is, did we tell it to do the right thing? But they eliminated hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of testing with WhereScape. I mentioned design, development, deployment, operation. We'll see this in detail as I go through this. This is just a handy little diagram that shows our design tool, developing a conceptual logical model all the way down to developing, excuse me, a physical model. And today I'll be building a physical model of, I'll do a star schema. If you're familiar with Data Vault, I'll probably also have time to very quickly generate a raw vault. I can talk about the business vault and presentation layer you can put on top of that. Excuse me. 1,200 customers around the world, probably about 1,500 now. The slide may be a little old. Not tied to any particular industry. So banking, finance, higher education, nonprofits, government agencies, pretty much everything you can think of. We have customers, sports teams. We have a couple major league sports teams that are using WhereScape both on the field and in the back office. One of them I think is cute. One of their dashboards has a metric, which is hot dogs per minute. How many hot dogs per minute are they selling? I always thought that was one of the more amusing metrics I've seen in an analytics system. As I'm going through this, as I'm building out my data warehouse, obviously my conceptual model and logical model are independent of wherever I'm going to be building it. But when I actually push it out and build the physical model, WhereScape is pretty much platform independent. So whether you're building on Oracle or Databricks or Snowflake or on-prem SQL Server or any of about 18, 19 different targets we support, the work you're doing, 98% of it is exactly the same. WhereScape takes care of typecasting, data conversions, things like that. It knows how to write PSQL versus TSQL versus SNOSQL versus PostgreSQL. The templates we have generate the correct code for the correct vendor, which again saves a lot of time, a lot of mistakes, a lot of rework. That's the end of my quick spiel about WhereScape. If you do like this demo, if you do want to see it in more detail, we'll be glad to talk with you one-on-one, try and understand your use cases, talk with you about how WhereScape could be a potential fit. So enough of that. Let's jump into the demo, and I'll show you some very rapid prototyping that I can do, which I think is one of the big strengths about WhereScape. I can sit down with a data analyst, and I can very, very, very quickly, and you'll see it's a matter of minutes, create star schemas, add transformations, add calculated columns, whatever it is that they can give me immediate feedback on. And that's part of the whole agile development process. Is prototyping is as important as very strict requirements. The old traditional waterfall of I'm going to spend 4 months coming up with the requirements, then I'm going to spend 9 months of development, and then throw it over the wall, and hopefully the analyst will like it. The idea is that I can come up with very quickly what the analysts want. In the requirements phase, I always say that if you go to a bunch of analysts and ask them, what do you guys want? Their response is going to be, well, what have you guys got? A lot of times they don't know what they want until they see it. So the idea of prototyping is I can give them very, very quick examples. So WhereScape, in essence, is a Windows client. I've got this running on my laptop here with a Postgres backend that connects to databases and does work. in its production environment and its dev environment, what it's actually doing is it's mostly generating Python scripts with embedded SQL code. So we have Python scripts we're going to generate that pull data out of a source system, and that source system could be an ODBC connection, could be an ERP, could be JSON files, XML files, spreadsheets, CSVs, REST APIs, scripts that output text. We can pretty much pull data from about anywhere. If we don't do it out of the box, we can come up with templates that will pull whatever data from, AS400 or from old CICS machine, whatever it is. We can essentially pull data from anywhere. Over here on the far right, we've got the BI, the business intelligence, the analysts, data scientists, and like I said, I would throw AI in there now as well, who are using the results of this whole data infrastructure that we're building. So they're using Power BI, they're using Tableau, Looker, they're using their own custom tools, they're importing into Excel, whatever it is. Everything in between, from getting data out of a data source and landing it to creating this end user layer, gold layer, semantic layer, presentation layer, whatever you want to call it, that the end users are going to be consuming the data from. All that takes place within what we call the target. Again, the target could be Databricks, on-prem SQL Server, it could be Oracle. It's wherever we're building this whole infrastructure. So WhereScape itself, beyond getting data out of a data source and landing it in the target, doesn't touch data, doesn't consume data. Banks, finance, hospitals, people who are very paranoid about security really like WhereScape, because unlike a lot of other tools, which are maybe SaaS-based, we're not downloading data, we're not modifying data, we're simply writing scripts, and the native security within this database. In today's example, this is all Snowflake. This could just easily be Oracle or anything else. The native security handles all the access to the data. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to show you a nice way to do rapid prototyping, and then I'm going to show you a great way. So the nice way is just to give you an idea, to show you what WhereScape is doing, what we're generating, how we're generating it. And then I'm going to go through a really, really slick way where I can create a star schema from my source system literally in 10 minutes or less. So typically the way we do things is, again, we pull data from a data source, we land it in today's example, Snowflake. We may have a data foundation. This could be, if you're familiar with Data Vault, this could be a raw vault. This could be ODS. This could be a third normal form. In a medallion architecture, you may have heard that term. This would be a bronze layer. This would be a silver layer, and this would be a gold layer. We're moving data into here. It's been curated. It's been consolidated, correlated between maybe multiple systems. Maybe you've got multiple versions of SAP running you need to merge data from. Maybe you need to merge data from an ERP with an Excel spreadsheet, with data that's coming from, I don't know, a government agency through a REST API. All that kind of data governance, data quality, curation of things takes place here. And then on top of that, you can build this semantic model. Now, a lot of companies will build that semantic model in Power BI. And there's certainly advantages and good ways to do that. If you want to build something very quickly and test it, that's good. On the other hand, if you have 20 analysts who are all creating their own models on what is profitability, you're going to get 20 different answers. So there is an argument to be had that a lot of the semantic model needs to be in the data warehouse itself. You need to have a consistent, documented, traceable way that you're showing these numbers. Because anytime an analyst presents a new dashboard, a new report, the question is always, where these numbers come from? Do you trust these numbers? And you'll see that using WhereScape, because we're capturing metadata, we can trace data lineage all the way from the very, very end back to the very, very beginning. As I said, we're capturing metadata both from our source systems, as well as the work you're doing as you're setting up this whole pipeline of data going from data source to end user. We're capturing all the metadata there about business keys, about transforms, about relationships, how one table feeds into another table, and so on. I'll generate some documentation. That's pretty cool. That's not part of the rapid prototyping, but it is pretty cool, so I'll show you that. And I'll talk briefly about the scheduler, since that's not the focus of today's demonstration. So what I'm going to do first is I'm using this tool called Red, which is our builder tool. This works purely within a physical model. So I'm creating tables. I'm creating, in this case, Python scripts. In the case of SQL Server, it could be stored procedures. In the case of Fabric, it could be data pipelines, whatever it is. That's going to migrate data from a source system all the way to here. And what I'll do initially is I've got a data source, I've got SQL Server that's running, I've got an ODBC connection to it. I'll grab that and I'll load that into Snowflake. I'll add a stage table to add transforms. For the sake of time, I'll skip over this whole middle section and I'll go straight to creating a dimension on that, and then I'll show you what all that looks like. And this is, one quick way I can get data out of a source system and get it into a dimension, a star schema, into something that an end user now, since this is a physical table up in my target, they can use Tableau, Looker, Power BI, whatever it is they're used to using their own tools, and give me immediate feedback on the tables, on the data. Maybe add a transform, maybe add a calculated column, maybe merge data from multiple sources and present that. So let's go ahead and jump in. Again, I'll remind you there is a QA panel on the bottom if you have any questions. I'll try and leave a few minutes at the end. I'll also try and take a peek over there occasionally just to see if there's any, and as well as a chat window. All right, so let's get started. Let's create a dimension in Snowflake as just a quick rapid prototype. Then I can then show off to the data analyst who's potentially sitting next to me. I've got all these connections here to various things. I've got different files. I've got connections to an S3 bucket. I've got connections to Northwind, which is, excuse me, a sample database from Microsoft. I've got a sample database in Oracle. I'll use Northwind. It's a sample database. I'll just browse it quickly. And here is all the tables and views within my source system. So again, this is an ODBC connection. That's a SQL Server database out there somewhere. This could be a REST API. This could be any other ODBC connection. But I want to get this customer's data out of my source system and get it into my data warehouse. And if you remember the diagram, what I need to do is I need to create a load table. Again, I'm going to add a transform after that and then pipe it all into a dimension. All right, so to do that, some of my context to loads. I've already got some load tables where I'm already loading some data from my source system, but I don't have customers yet. So let me just drag this over from my source system to this work panel. I've got some automation taking place already. Naming conventions, everything's uppercase. All the load tables by default start with load underscore, that's configurable. All my load tables are going into a load schema, that's configurable. And then WhereScape already understands that I'm going to Snowflake from SQL Server. So any typecasting, any data conversions, things like that are taken care of for me. In addition, SQL Server has custom data types. I know there's another sample database called AdventureWorks, which is a bicycle shop. And it takes advantage of having these custom data types. There's a data type they have called person. I can certainly add those under tools. There's a way I can add to my data type mappings and say that these unknown new data types that we don't know of out of the box, here's how they relate to variables in Snowflake. and it'll take care of those data types for me. There's a lot of things here on the screen in setting up my load table. Pretty much, I just want to point out two things. One is a template. So we are ultimately going to be generating a Python script that's going to go to SQL Server. It's going to extract data from the customers table. It's going to compress it into a file. It's going to put that file up into Snowflake storage. And then we're also going to create the DDL to create this table up in Snowflake. It doesn't exist there yet. And then the script will copy the data from Snowflake storage into this new table. So let's build that script. I always thought the sequence was odd. I'm building a script for a table that doesn't exist yet. And then I will create the table and run the script that we just created. So WhereScape is wide open in what we do. It's whatever the opposite of a black box is. Anything we generate, any DDL, here's the DDL that we're using to create the table up in Snowflake. And if you actually look at it, we're extracting, this is metadata in the catalog tables in SQL Server. We're pulling that out as well and moving that into the load table in Snowflake. And then here's the code that's getting data out of SQL Server, compressing it, putting it up into Snowflake storage and copying it. So now with those few clicks, I don't want to display columns, I want to display data. I've now got data. This table didn't exist in Snowflake a minute ago, but now we've got a one-to-one copy of all the data from SQL Server that's up in Snowflake. So we are now here. Our landing table, our load table, it's a one-to-one copy of whatever's in Snowflake. In fact, if I look here, this is the script. I'm in the central time zone. So this was generated just a minute ago. Less than 2 minutes ago. Generated 622 lines of Python code that does what I said it does. It goes to SQL Server, pulls out data, compresses it, loads it into Snowflake storage, copies that into the existing table. Nice, well documented, lots of debug code if I ever turn debug on. And it works. It works the first time. Now, this could easily have been any other database. This could have been a JSON file. This could have been a REST API. And it works exactly the same. Let me show you that. I've got a connection here to the Treasury Department. I use the U.S. Treasury Department just for random data. And when I create this connection, I say, okay, this is a REST API. Here's the URL we're going to create to get data, and we're getting back a JSON file. Okay, let's see how that works. I can browse this REST API just like I can browse a database. So it's already made the HTTP call. It's already gotten back the JSON file, and it's showing me the content of that file. And I say, okay, that looks okay. And it's showing me that we've got data, we've got metadata, we've got links. I'll just say, okay, that's the object we want to model. And now here in WhereScape, that's the structure of the JSON file that came back from the REST API. How do I get that data into Snowflake? Same way, I just drag it and drop it. Same objects here. I'll just rename this load treasury because that's going to make more sense. The data type mapping is different because it's coming from a file instead of coming from a SQL Server database. Same template is used. So it's going to generate a completely different Python script that's going to do something completely different. But the idea is that me as a WhereScape user, I don't need to worry about the mechanics of how do I invoke an HTTP call? How do I get back a JSON file? How do I parse a JSON file? How do I get that JSON file in a format where I can load it into Snowflake? Well, all that's taken care of for me. And there's my treasury data up in Snowflake. And it's in a load table, just like my customer data was. I landed it here. The first case from an ODBC connection, and the second case from a REST API. All right. How do I get this data into the terms of a dimension so I can show it off to an analyst? As I said, I'm going to create a stage table. So I set my context to stage tables. I don't have a stage customers yet. Instead of browsing my source system, everything is in the data warehouse now. So if I refresh this, here is my load customers table. If you notice, I don't have a stage customers yet. So I just drag that over and drop it. Any transforms I want to add are going to be done in the stage table. Different template that's going to generate a different script. Create the stage table because it doesn't exist. I'll tell it what the business key is. I don't have to, but it helps. So there's my business key. And now I've got data in my stage table. I haven't added any transforms. I haven't done anything, so it's not terribly exciting. This is all the same data that was in the load table. But let me jump now to a dimension. I told you, so we were going to create a dimension out of this. As I said, we've got the load table. We've got the stage table set up. I'm going to add a transform in a little bit. I haven't added one yet, but we're going to create a dimension off of our new data. So how do I do that? Again, browse my data warehouse, set my context here to dimensions. I've already got one for employee, one for product. I want one for customer. So let's drag that and drop it. Again, the naming conventions, the locations, all those are set up for me. And now WhereScape is asking, hey, you want a dimension. What type of dimension do you want? If you remember your Kimball architecture, there's type 1 where we've got one record per business key. And if anything changes, we just update it. So we have whatever the most current version is. We've got a type 2 where we've got an effective date range on every row to tell us when certain values were active, current and previous value. And I think this is a type 6 or a type 7. I've never used one. I'm going to select type 2 just because those are fun. Fun in my own way. And as I look through here, I've got more options available here. I can type in some documentation. So this is online customers. Our grain is, I don't know, one row per customer, one customer per row. How do I use this dimension? I can just say, select star from blah, 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 whatever it is. Let me go back to my properties. Just like the load table, just like the stage table, I want to build the update procedure that's going to populate this dimension, type 2 dimension, from my stage table. So the procedure is done already. I'm going to create the table because it doesn't exist yet and load it. If I just click OK, it's going to say, hey, this is a type 2 dimension. Tell me what you want to keep track of. So I'll say, okay, we're going to keep track of company name and title. And if those change, we're going to have a historic view of those three columns. And just like that, I now have a fully functional type 2 dimension. I've got my ghost record in case we try and join a fact table to here. I've got my surrogate key. And then for every record, I've got the effective start time and effective end time for each record, as well as whether it's the current flag or not and which version it is. Great. So all good so far. Let me go back and add a transform so I can show you what transforms we can do and how the type 2 dimension is going to handle that. I go back to my stage table where we have transforms. I've shown this data to my analyst. Their display data. Again, I haven't connected this to a fact table yet. That would probably take about 2 or 3 minutes to connect it to an existing fact table. But they're querying this dimension. They're saying, hey, this company name, can you convert that to all uppercase? That's going to help my reports because some systems are mixed case, some cases are all uppercase. If it's all uppercase, it's going to make more sense. Great. How do I do that? I go to the stage table. I look at company name. Besides being able to add comments on here, unique comments, this came from the extended attributes in SQL Server, the catalog tables in SQL Server. It flowed to the stage table. It flowed to the dimension. This is it in the stage table. I can change that. I can change data types. I can change all that, but I can add transforms. Right now, this stage customer's company name is being populated with whatever was in the load customer's company name. But instead, I've got my snowflake functions here. I've got pretty much every ODB, every target you can think of. I happen to know there is a string function here that is called upper. And I'm just going to paste in the source system name. Now, this is a small example of automation, but most times that's what I'm going to want to do. I'm going to want to add a transform to whatever's in the load table. I didn't have to type anything. In fact, if you've been paying attention, the only thing I've actually typed so far has been some comments I put on the dimension. Everything else has been drag and drop. Less typing, fewer mistakes. Fewer mistakes means I get to my final target faster. I've added a transform. I haven't changed the structure of the table, so I don't need to recreate it. But because I added the transform, I do need to rebuild my update procedure. So I'll just rebuild my update procedure. I will re-execute it. By default, the load tables and stage tables are truncate and refill, flush and fill. You can change that, but that's the default. And now if I look at my data for my stage table, I can see that my company name, which used to be mixed case, is now all uppercase. Great, that's a transform. How does this transform work? I'll show you that briefly. All the stage tables essentially work as an insert into select from. Insert into my stage table, select from. This could be multiple stage tables. Multiple tables that I'm selecting from. But here's my transform. So I can use any valid SQL statement as a transform. Case statements, if statements, I can reference other objects in the database. Anything that compiles as a valid SQL expression, I can use as a transform. While I'm here, I will show you earlier today, I created this one. If I look here, sorry, not orders. I look at orders and look here. This insert into select from, insert into my orders table can get quite it's not too complicated, but I'm selecting from orders, I'm denormalizing with the order details, and then I'm joining in my dimension and employee. All this was generated automatically for me. I had options where I can choose what kinds of joins I want to do and things like that. Maybe I'm merging data from multiple systems. I can do that very easily too to get my stage table to one. But okay, so I've updated data in my stage customers. I didn't change anything in my dimension. All I did was change the data that's being fed into it. Now, if I simply run my update procedure again, I've got new data going into my type 2 dimension. And now when I look at my data here, I've got 2 rows per customer, the original mixed case company name, along with the updated all case company name, and all the metadata columns are doing what they're supposed to do. The previous record, the end date got changed to the current timestamp. That's configurable. The new record and the yes flag got for current record got deprecated to no. The new record got inserted with the current time and date as the effective start time. Again, that's configurable. With end of time as the end date. It's the current flag and it's version number 2. So that's it. That's a type 2 dimension. And again, it's fully functional. It's fully instantiated. My analysts can go query this, do whatever they want. They want more changes done. They want more transforms added. They want calculated columns added. I can very, very quickly make those changes, push them out into my physical model. And as I said, they can use their tools to tell me what's good, what's bad. It would take me a few minutes. I don't want to spend the time, but I could spend a couple minutes and add it to a fact table that I already have created, but I'm going to skip over that for now. All right, what's not part of the rapid prototyping, but I'll show you anyway, is documentation. So I'll just select everything, create documentation for everything, excuse me, and then display it. So what is documentation? This is an HTML file I just created. I can put that on a shared drive, any place that people have access to. I've got user documentation that includes things like a glossary, including this thing we just added, business key for the customer on DIM customers. So at the column level, I've got documentation. I can, as I said, modify that, add it. Maybe I've got units of measure. Maybe I've got other warnings on there, reasonable values and expected values, only effective after a certain date. Those kinds of things, excuse me, I can add to my documentation. As well as here's my dimension I just created, DIM customers, all the columns on it. Here's my documentation I typed in. If you've got this existing somewhere in a data catalog or in CSVs or some other format, we've got ways we can automatically import it. But worst comes to worst, I can just type it in on a few key things. So this is the end user documentation. It's a subset of the total documentation. It's meant for the analysts and things, the end user facing objects. The technical documentation is much broader. It includes all the things like the load and stage tables, which we didn't have in the end user documentation. If I look at the dimension, I've got more information here. I've even actually got the update script I can look at. So if I want to see what's in production, I can go look at the code without actually being in production. I've got the same comments. I've got a trackback diagram. This one's real straightforward. Dimension came from stage, came from load, came from customers. These can get more complicated. My documentation I typed in and so on. If I want to see where things came from, I can back up to the stage table, and here I can see, here's my transform I added. Here's where the stage table came from. So I've got total lineage I can look at as well. Again, this documentation, I can create it in a dev environment every morning, QA environment every afternoon, every morning, and whoever is using that system has up-to-date documentation. The other thing I can do is in here, if I'm looking at dim customers and I changed company name, I can look at an individual column and see where it came from, as well as all the transforms it went through. As I said before, with data analysts, the question always comes up, where did the data come from? Where did this number come from? I've got complete visibility in here to see where things came from. All right, that's what I want to show you about this tool. This builds the physical model, and this was a nice way to do rapid prototyping. As I said, I can go in here and I can add columns, maybe on my orders. I've got quantity and unit price. They want to add a calculated column that is, let's show me the total value of the order line. So I can go in here and say, okay, let's add a column. We'll call it line value, line value, total value of order line. I have to tell it what it is. I forget the exact context, but I'll have to fix this later. And then the transform, I can say, what is this thing? This is on the order details. It is quantity times price. Again, I don't have to type those things. There, I just added a calculated column. I believe it added it at the bottom. If I don't like it there, I can move it around wherever I want. I'll put it there. And that's how I can add a calculated column to line value. Now, a couple things. I changed the structure of the table, so I'd have to recreate it. I'd have to recreate the load procedure. If I wanted that to show up on my dimension, I'd have to modify to my dimension as well. That's how I can add calculated columns and things. All right, I'll pause for a second. I'll take a quick break. We've got about 20 minutes left. And I showed you this is the nice way of doing rapid prototyping, being able to pull data in from a data source, quickly get it into my target, quickly add a stage table for any transforms, denormalizations, merging, joining, whatever I need to do, quickly get it into some object. And this could just be a flat table. In this case, I created a dimension. And as I said, if I had a couple minutes, I could add that dimension to my orders. I could recreate the, in fact, let me do that I won't do it completely, but here's my dimension. Pretty much all I do is I drag it and drop it here. And it says, oh, you want to join a dimension? There, I've now got dim customers added. Because of all the metadata, WhereScape understands that I'm adding a dimension, so I just need to add the key, and it understands the business key here and sees a common name here and goes, okay, that must be the name of the business key that's joining the two. If it's not, I can fix it, but it happens to be the same here. Now I can simply recreate this table, recreate the update procedure, run it, and there, I've got my new dimension joined in the stage table. I'll have to add it to the dimension as well, but that just takes a minute or two. All right, I said I had a nice way and a really, really cool way to develop rapid prototyping of that dimension. And this is, again, all working at the physical level. I'm creating load tables. Excuse me. I'm creating stage tables. I'm manually adding transforms. I'm manually creating my objects and things like that. Perfectly valid way to work. I'd say probably half of our customers do this way. This is how they build out their data warehouse. But there is another tool we have that about half of our customers use, which allow you to work in a top-down approach. They allow me to work at a conceptual level, build out, if I don't have it already, what the conceptual model of my data warehouse looks like, build out the logical model. What are all the attributes of all the things in my data warehouse? profile my source systems, and then add those source systems to my logical model and then push that out. So I'm going to jump to our design tool. And this is basically a series of models I'm going to go through that do more and more refinement to create a logical model of my data warehouse with the source systems attached to it, completely independent of any source system, not any source systems, completely independent of wherever I'm going to be building it. Unless, I happen to type in specific transforms that reference specific PSQL, TSQL, SnowSQL, PostgreSQL, whatever it is. The last thing I do here is I export this to the builder tool here, and this is what actually creates the physical model. So here, working in the design tool, conceptual model, logical model, profile my source systems. But let me show you how fast I can develop a star schema here. You saw me develop a dimension here by creating a load table, stage table, dimension. In about the same amount of time, I can create the entire star schema. So this is the really slick way of working on things. So ideally, what I do is in my perfect world, I've got a conceptual model I build. A conceptual model is not tied to any specific source system. When you build a data warehouse, really it is a business solution to a business problem. There's a ton of IT technologies involved in it, but the whole point of building an analytic system is to solve business problems, answer business questions. So ideally, what you do up front is you do, if you don't have one already, you do some sort of analysis. You go talk to purchasing, you go talk to HR, you talk to whoever is in charge of student retention, and find out what are the analysts reporting on. They're reporting on customers, they're reporting on orders, employees. How do all these things relate to each other? How does a customer relate to an order? How does a shipper relate to an order? How does an employee relate to an order? So that kind of analysis, if you're building an entire data warehouse from scratch, is essential. And again, it's a non-IT process. Now, I can certainly build this within my design tool, 3D, WhereScape's 3D, but I can use ER Studio, which is another product by our sister company, Irwin, Purview, Colibra. There's a nice tool called Ellie, ELLIE. I can use any of those tools to build this model and import it. Maybe I've already got an existing one. I can skip the conceptual model and go straight to my logical model and say, okay, maybe I go profile my existing data warehouse and just grab this. So I've got all my tables, all my rows, or in the terms of a logical model, entities and attributes. But I've got all that. I can pull all that from an existing system as well. Great. So what do I do next? This is my logical model. I've got all the things that are going to be in my data warehouse that I'm going to be reporting on. I've got all the attributes. I can do a couple things, but I'll skip ahead a little bit. And what I'll say is the next thing I do after I have my logical model, again, this is independent of any ERP, any database, any file formats or things like that. This is a sandcastle in the sky design, logical level design of what my reporting system, my analytic system is going to look like. Once I've done that, then I go look at my source systems. And I've got, connections again to various databases, to files, to REST APIs and things like that. Again, I got the Northwind database. I can discover my source system. This is an ODBC connection, but again, it could be about anything. And I will create a new version of my discovery. I'll explain what discovery is and profiling is in just a minute. I'll just give it today's date. I believe it's the 26th. I happen to know that in my source system, I don't care about views and system tables. I don't care about a table that starts with the word sys, so I'll leave that out. I'll click OK. I'll click Next. This is small. So again, I'll explain what discovery is. Again, I'll explain what profiling is. When it's done, it takes about that long to look at all the profiling tables. This is going to look a lot like my logical table because I did model this after my logical model after a source system after saying don't do that. But here's all the columns and tables in my Northwind database. I've got primary keys, foreign keys, things like that. So I've got this entire model here. If this were an Excel spreadsheet, I wouldn't have these relationships. If this were JSON files, maybe each one of these is a separate JSON file. I obviously don't have these relationships. The relationships are very important. That's metadata that WhereScape is going to be using. So I can quickly say, hey, here's a relationship. I've also got a button that says derive relationships. So based on table names, based on column names, it can make recommendations on, in this case, a bunch of foreign keys it wants me to add. So that is discovery, structure of my source system. And then profiling is also really cool. Profiling is a bunch of out-of-the-box metrics we run on the data itself. So null percentage, I can look here and see that the customers table in my Northwind database, 65%, almost 2/3 of the values are null for region. So what do I do with that? Well, if I know who owns the Northwind database, I can go ask them, hey, why are 2/3 of these values null? And they may say, I don't know. They may say, we've only been collecting that since January 1st. So anything before January 1st is going to be null. Great. That's good information. I can go here. I can look at region. I can add a comment that says only valid after January 1, 2025. And that comment will flow all the way to that end user documentation that you saw. I've also got the ability to add my own custom profiling. So I've got standard ones here, but we had one customer that said, I've got on my order table, I've got ship dates. I want to add a metric that shows me, it's not on here because we haven't, these are all the out of the box ones, but shows me ship dates that are more than 2 years in the future, because a ship date that's more than 2 years in the future is just bad data. Something that shows me data more than 2 years in the past, because that's bad data. We had another customer that they wanted to identify social security numbers, not by column name, but by actual data. Great. We added a custom metric in here that on any string value did a percentage that matched 3 numbers dash 2 numbers dash 4 numbers, which in the United States is a format for a social security number. So I've got all this profiling data available on my source system. I've got the structures and things like that. I talked about generating a star schema from this as a rapid prototype. Well, you saw me just do the discovery. I'd have to set up my connection. The connection setup is very straightforward. It's an ODBC connection, and that's about it. Then I can do my discovery here and see what my source system looks like. Ideally, and what I would be doing is I'd be now attaching this to my logical model to explain to WhereScape how my logical model gets populated from my source systems. But in this case, we're doing rapid prototyping. I want to get this into my target as fast as I can. Okay, so let's create a new star schema. I will give it, I'll call it demo and give it today's date. It may complain about that. Yeah, it doesn't like that name. So let me go here and expand this. And I obviously did this yesterday. I'll do it again today. Version numbers are alphanumeric, so they could be sprint numbers, my initials. There, that's my initials. And now I've got my almost blank. I've got a couple dimensions here for dates. I don't care about dim date for Teradata, so I'll get rid of that one. But let's say I want to create a very fast star schema from my new source system that I just profiled. My Northwind database profiled today. Great, I can expand this. I can say, okay, orders. I want a fact table based on orders. So I just drag that and drop it over here and say, that's a fact table. There we go, there's my fact table. I do want to denormalize it like I did in my builder tool. So I'll take everything from product ID to discount, and I'll just drag that and drop it right here. I actually didn't have to tell WhereScape how to join these tables because it knows from my source system how order and order details are already joined. So great, I just drag it and drop it, and that is now denormalized. I'm going to move order line up a little bit. Move up, get that under order ID, and move it down one. There we go. Because that's eventually going to turn into my business key. All right, dimensions. I want some dimensions. Okay, so I can say I want customers as a dimension like I had before. So I just drag that and drop it. I'm going to make it a type 2 slowly changing dimension like I did before. I'm going to select the same columns I selected before that I want to track historically. I want employees because employees are part of an order, and we'll make that just a type 1 dimension. And then I want products. Products are important, and I'll just make that a type 1 dimension as well. And then I'll click on this little tool and just straighten it out some. So now I've got my fact table that is joined to products, it's joined to customers, and it's joined to employees, but it's joining it by the business key. So I can just say generate artificial keys, and now it's adding those artificial keys to the fact table. Now that I've got those added, I don't need customer ID on my fact table anymore. I don't need product ID on my fact table anymore. And if I scroll down, I don't need employee ID on my fact table anymore. So there, now I've got my fact table defined. In fact, if I look here and say on this object, where did this data come from? Fact came from orders and order details. Okay. I don't have any load and stage tables created yet. If you remember back in here, I had to create a load table to get data into my target and then create a stage table to add transforms. There's a handy little button down here that says just says create load and stage. So I will create a load and stage. And that will be 0826 again. These are a set of rules that are made for data vault, which is one of the methods one of the architectures we support. Instead, I'm going to do this, which is the start schemas. There's a bunch of rules that are followed. So these rules are splitting things into tables. They're adding attributes. They're adding transforms. They're changing data types. They're merging tables. They're doing all these different things. But now I've got all my load and stage tables generated for me. I didn't have to build those. And now if I look at my fact table, I can see the fact table gets a lot more complicated because it's actually coming from the stage table. Stage table is coming from load orders, load order details, dim customers, dim employees, dim products. The dimensions are coming from stage tables, which are coming from load tables. My orders, load orders, and load order details are coming directly from my Northwind database. I can generate all this as documentation as well. We're running out of time. So what I'll say is that now that I've got this created, I've got my fact table, my dimensions. I've got all my load and stage tables. From here, I push this out to our builder tool here, and it will create all the load tables. It'll create all the stage tables. It'll create all the dimensions necessary. It'll create all the Python scripts with all the embedded SQL code, and I'm ready to go. So the second way of rapidly generating a prototype was profiling my source system, getting the structure of it, creating a a star schema with the objects I want in it. And again, WhereScape understands the relationships. If I needed to, I've got a dim date here. I've got a bunch of dates on my fact table for ship dates and required dates and things like that. If I took the time, I could create views, what are called role-playing dimensions on top of dim date, and I could have one for shipped date, one for required date, whatever else I actually have, dates I have on there. So I could create those dimensions in here just as easily as I created these dimensions. Once I've got this created, I create my load and stage tables. And what I'm afraid it would take maybe 5-6 minutes preparing it for red. And then that would push that out to, in this case, Snowflake. Let me just tell you one other thing here. I've got all these data types here. These are all SQL Server data types because when I created this, I created it from a SQL Server source. Now my end target may not be SQL Server. In fact, if I say prepare for red and say, okay, we're going to create this, get this ready for red, I have to tell it what database do I want to create this for. So one of the questions came, will this be posted on any other platforms? Everything I'm doing in this tool is at a conceptual and logical level. So unless I'm hand coding, which we don't like, unless I am adding custom transforms that are specific, I can now say, okay, this is Snowflake. This is Oracle. This is going, that's where I'm going to build it. Okay, I'm going to build this in this case for Snowflake. It goes through and it makes sure that it understands all the data type conversions. I want to pick all the load tables. This is something I'm doing that's very repetitive. I could certainly write rules that do this. Our builder tool is a rules-based engine. Every time I'm clicking on these buttons over here, generating my facts, my dimensions, all that, we're executing behind the scene, we're executing rules. And those rules are all configurable. So if I have, say, PII, and I want to do something special PII, so now what it's going to do is it's going to convert all my SQL Server data types to, in this case, Snowflake data types. But again, it isn't until I get to the stage where I'm going to push it out and build the physical model that WhereScape even cares what the target is. It's got these placeholders in place, what the data types probably are. In fact, the ones that did not come from SQL Server, the metadata columns, the dimensions, things like that, they don't even have data types, or they have data types that start with TGT. And basically what that says is, we don't know where this is going to be created, but we're going to create an integer in whatever target it is. I can go here, I can go to manage data type mappings, and we're going from SQL Server to Snowflake, which it looks like this one. And here's all my data type mappings. How do I convert a TGT integer? Well, it gets converted to a 38 digit number in Snowflake. Great. If I've got other custom data types, I mean, I can make up my own data types in here in my models, my logical model. I can create my own data types. Another thing I can do is, excuse me, I can go here and on these columns, we've got, if I select a column, we've got column types, attributes. So I can say, okay, this is to be deleted. I can, in case I don't want this, I can add my own custom column types. In fact, if I do that in here, excuse me. So here is one I've created that's got data types on everything. If I happen to pick one, this is for a data vault. And if you're familiar with data vault, there is a attribute type called satellite, low, medium, high rate of change. But I've created these two, PII and important flag, don't exist out of the box. I added those as my own custom types. And now when I say okay, I can see that unit price, for some bizarre reason, is labeled as PII. I don't have any rules in place that tell WhereScape what to do with PII. What do you want to do? Do you want to drop it and delete it? Do you want to mask it? Do you want to encrypt it? Do you want to break it off and put it in its own special object in a separate schema and then lock down that schema? I can't tell you what you want to do with PII, but I can tell you that you can flag things as PII. You can add your own custom rules, and you can add a button down here that says process PII, and it will do whatever it needs to do to process that PII. There's a lot more I can show you. Someone asked if we're going to share this recorded session. Yes, definitely. This is going to go out to everyone who attended. I appreciate all of you attending. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. If you have questions, I can hang around for a few minutes and answer questions. If later today, this evening, tomorrow, you think of the most perfect question, don't be afraid to reach out to us. Respond to the emails you're getting. My email I will stick in chat. And there is my email. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's exactly what we're here for. If you think this is a good fit for your company in developing to rapidly develop these prototypes, rapidly develop star schemas, even rapidly develop data vaults. I didn't have time to show that, but it doesn't take me much longer. If you're familiar with data vault, it can get incredibly complicated to develop a whole data vault. Here, let me show you while I'm here. So here's my finished design. I've got all my source systems attached. I've got all my attributes set. Again, this is my logical model of what I want to be reported on. I just click on Generate Data Vault and say, okay, we're calling it demo. We're calling it today's date. If you're familiar with Data Vault, this could take you days, if not weeks to do. What do I want to call the hash keys? What do I want to call the tables? Runs through a whole bunch of rules. And it's done. Here's my data vault. I got all my hub satellites and links in my raw vault. I can generate a business vault. I can put pits and bridges on top of this. I can put a user layer on top of that. But the idea is that data vault is built as a repetitive pattern-based process. I can certainly use those patterns. If I don't like what happens here, I can go back to here. This is a generated artifact, so we don't edit it directly, but I can go back here and change my attributes, change my rules, move things around, and regenerate my data vault. That's one of the things I really like if you're looking at data vault with WhereScape is I work at this level. I work at an abstract level. A lot of other tools I've seen have you work at this level where you're assigning source systems to hub satellites and links, and that makes no sense whatsoever. What makes more sense is working at a more conceptual level. So again, top of the hour, a minute past. Appreciate your time, your attention. As I said, I will be glad to stick around for a few minutes, see if you have any questions. Here's my slide one more time. You can go to wherescape.com and request a demo. I'll be glad to talk with you, get some specific use cases from you. Probably even set you up with a trial if you want. And as you saw, I can start with the source system, and if I need to get something in front of an analyst, I can do it literally in a matter of a few minutes. Give them an entire star schema. They can start querying. They can start giving me feedback on what works, what doesn't work. And then besides that, we've got the full data lineage. We've got the full documentation. We've got a scheduler that can populate all the objects and everything else. All right. Again, thank you very, very much. That's going to finish us up just a minute or two, a little late. Someone asked, can changes to the module be versioned and rolled back if necessary? Yes. So in our builder tool, we actually version everything. So as I make changes, I made changes to my stage table, for example. If I go there, I can go back and look at all the previous versions. I can revert back to previous versions, not just of my scripts, but my objects as well. And then in here, essentially what I'm doing is every version I'm creating, I created a bunch yesterday, 825, 825B, 825C. So yes, all this is in a database in a Postgres backend that can be backed up and restored, as well as being able to create different versions. No, someone asked, do attendees get a certificate? Unfortunately, we don't have certificates. If there's something specific you want, go ahead and email me and I can probably make something up. And then recorded session, yes, we're going to send a recording to everybody who registered, not just the attendees. But again, one last time, thank you all very, very much. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to reach out to me with my email address that's in the chat. And with that, I will finish up. And thank you all for attending. And enjoy the rest of your day.